Very good evening. Welcome to the Rich Lawyer Sangama program, a whiff from a window. What exactly is this whiff from a window? Today we have, in fact, when we started posting this poster for today's event, the program was that there was this proposed amendment to the Karnataka Civil Service Rules by Government of Karnataka, which had submitted to our writ petition in the High Court, stating that they intend to amend the Karnataka Civil Service Rules so as to ensure the identity of a transgender person, a third gender, will be introduced in the definition part of the civil service rules, and they would be given a horizontal reservation of 1% in each section of reservation, whether it is general category, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, backward classes, all of the categories, 1% reservation will be provided to transgender community. An extraordinary amendment that was proposed by Government of Karnataka. So we were seeking the Government of Karnataka to come with that particular amendment at the earliest. Interestingly, we are pleased to inform that by the time we are talking to you, that law is in force. The law is amended. Now, third gender is part of the Karnataka Civil Service Rules, and there is 1% reservation for transgender community in all the sections of employment, whether it is all the categories employment, and irrespective of their status, they will be in a position to seek for employment in government jobs whenever they're called for. The door of opportunities is going to open for the first time for a community which has been not even recognized, a community which has been deprived of its existence, a community who has been living in such difficult and challenging times. They do even as on this day, but this is a ray of hope, a whiff from a window, a whiff of fresh air from the window. Window is slightly open now. It has opened for transgender community. We expect this to happen to various other sections of the sexual minorities of this country. And to put it on record, we are extremely thankful to the Government of Karnataka for bringing this revolutionary change in this particular law, bringing this kind of a change. And I'm very happy to announce that this is the first time in Asia a transgender community getting recognition of this nature, that they are going to be entitled to, as a matter of right, employment in public employment of the government. That's something the most revolutionary change, and we thank Government of Karnataka for bringing such a wonderful change. Today with us, in fact, it was part of the struggle that we had done. In fact, almost 1 year of litigation on behalf of Sangama, which we had challenged that the Government of Karnataka was not implementing the guidance or direction issued by Supreme Court in Nalsa judgment in 2014. So we had sought, and Government of Karnataka said that we will go through the whole process, and they did it in a very structured manner and brought this change, and which is a revolutionary change that's happened. So this petition of ours, public interest litigation, was filed by Rich Lawyer on behalf of Sangama, one of the oldest organization in Bangalore that has been working on the right of sexual minorities. More particularly, its seminal contribution to the rights of the transgender community is well known and recorded. And they were the persons who came forward to bring this kind of a change. So I thank Sangama for bringing this opportunity for us to seek this change to happen in law. Today, transgenders have a right in public employment is a law of the state of Karnataka. This is an amazing revolutionary change. And today, with me are amazing persons. We have Tarjini Desai, the young colleague of Rich Lawyer, who has put her heart and in drafting this petition, discussing it over a period of time with everyone at Sangama, with me, and the quantum of research that she did, an extraordinary research she did and prepared, and we added value, and she was greatly helpful in preparing this writ petition and filing it to the High Court. Tajni Desai is with us today. And today, also with me are two of my wonderful colleagues at Reach Lawyer. One, Darshini Sukumaran, a fourth year law student from Newell's National Law School at Kochi, and Namrata Keshava, alumnus of Newell's Kochi and a lawyer who has worked with Reach Lawyer, and she is presently pursuing her Master's in Public Policy in National Law School of India University in Bangalore. And add to us, today we are with us is the guest of the day, the speaker of the day, Professor Arvind Narayan. Professor Arvind Narayan and myself, we started working on these right-based issues from a legal perspective, kind of support, legal support that the community needs 21 years ago. He was my first partner in this enterprise. It was such a joy that today, on this day, when we have such a historic success that we have seen, so we are with Professor Arvind Narayan. Professor Arvind Narayan is an attorney. He is also the professor at Institute of Public Policy in National Law School, Bangalore, and he also is a professor at Ajin Premji University in Bangalore. He is a wonderful activist who has done such amount of seminal work on the field of LGBTQ. It has been one of the finest contributions. Additional protocols to Yogyakarta principles on LGBT rights. He is one of the architects of that kind of a change that has brought globally in respect to rights of LGBTQ concern. He is an expert on constitution and an amazing scholar on Ambedkar studies. Today, we have such august presence of Professor Arvind Narayan with us, and who is going to explain us what exactly it means. I am going to hand it over to my colleagues, Darshini Sukumaran and Namrata Keshava, to take it forward. Thank you.
A very good evening to everybody today. So let's start off with Tarjini. Tarjini, this has been your baby through and through. I remember last year the pandemic was on full onslaught, like courts had gone online, e-filing had just started. Remember this conversation where you told me, I just want only this case filed, like I'm going to file this writ, whatever it takes. So how does it feel, like 1 year of hard work?
It feels quite great because, it was quite a lot of hard work, not only from my side, but a lot of contribution from the platform, from Venkatesh sir and several other people who were involved in the process. And there's also a lot of technical issues, considering that we just entered into a pandemic and, everything was unprecedented and new regarding the procedure. So that took a little bit of a toll, but the kind of impact that it has made for the community at large is something that is incredibly satisfying. So that works really well in our favor at the end of the day. So
my next question is going to be, if you could just give us a summary of the case, right? How was it before? Like, why this writ petition? Like, what did it change? If you could just summarize it for us, it would be super helpful for the audience.
Yes, so I remember, this may not be directly related to the case, but a very small instance that I would like to share at the outset. This relative of mine that I was visiting once in Gujarat told us, so when there's a wedding or there's a function in the house, there's a practice that transgender persons come to the house to take money or something, there's an old cultural thing in India. So there were a few transgender people had come to our house, they took money, and this relative of mine commented saying that, laborer works hard the entire day to earn this much money or an entire week. And that is how much they just come, show up here and take from us and go. So this reflects the insensitivity of the society at large. Now, to work on that insensitivity at the root level would obviously take a certain amount of time, patience, and maturity level of the society. But what we can work on is some other factors which may or may not directly impact them. The very fact that they are having to beg, the very fact that they do get into sex work is because they do not have employment opportunities. If you ask anybody from the society today, are you going to employ them in your house even as a maid? Nobody is going to respond positively. So one of the major problems is employment. And So through Sangama, we came across this notification of the Karnataka State Police, wherein they have very specifically said that only male and female persons may apply to these posts. So we thought, of course, it is very unfair discrimination, especially in light of the Nalsa judgment that came out, which was expected to create certain ripples, and states should have followed suit despite a lot of time having been lapsed. So since that did not happen, we filed for implementation of the same in the High Court. So that is how, and of course we had the platform of Reach Law with Venkatesh sir and his 30 years of experience working in the field. So that helped quite a lot, and that is how we decided on going ahead with the case.
So I remember sitting through one of the hearings, and I think one contention between like parties was horizontal reservation versus vertical, and it caused quite the stir. So are you pro horizontal or vertical? I mean, do you think horizontal reservations make more sense for the transgender community?
I think they make more sense. So vertical reservation is something like you have 100 seats, and there's reservation for SC, ST, OBC. Now, horizontal reservation is like it cuts across the lines of vertical reservation. And suppose it says 50% reservation, then 50% of general category, 50% of SC, 50% of ST. So I think that's a better proposition. So what we have ultimately got right now is horizontal reservation. And I think it would be a success for the community.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on the case. I mean,
thank you.
It's going to go down as a watershed case, probably going to be read by like students future in law school. I'm sure the case will go down like the case which pretty much revolutionized reservations being the first. Now my next question would be to Arvind sir. So a community such as the transgender community, which you go back in time 200, 300 years, we know of these stories of kings who valued the members of these communities. They were confidants, they were guards, they were very important functional parts of society, right? And you go on back into our mythology and culture as well. You had a Shikandi, you have an Ardhanarishwara we worship even today. From there, we ended up working in a regressive manner where today this community is stigmatized, victimized. You don't see like nobody when you say transgender, the only images like Tarjini mentioned too. All you can think of are those people who come at the birth of a child or a wedding or traffic signals or prostitution, right? Or sex work. So from there, going from there to today, where you have like a 1% reservation in public service for the transgender community, if you could just shed some light on the evolution, the journey, right from being a community which had no identity to today a community which is being given the opportunity of reservations in public services.
Yeah, just to I think the point which we made even when the other milestone happened, which is Navdeep Singh Johar in 2018, was that it's one step in a journey, and now our hands are untied, and you can fight with our hands untied. I think we should see this similarly. We should see the incredible success really of this of the reservation in that sense. It's one step in a journey. I still remember. I'm sure Mr. Venkatesh will 100% agree, which a colleague which Mr. Anand Grover once said. We were talking about, I think, the fact that a trans person was given employment in the Karnataka High Court as a grade A or grade 2, grade 3 or grade 4 employee. And he said, that's not good enough. We want transgender people to be judges of this country. And so that's the imagination we must have. We should not be confined by the reservation point. And the point I'd make here is why I think it's a very important success, and really congratulations to Reach Law and congratulations to Tarjini on getting this step, is because I think there's multiple effects and impacts. See, the one effect and impact which is quite obvious and on the face of it is the question of employment. Obviously, state employment, in spite of the fact that it's really cut down a lot because of the liberalization trend, is still a very important avenue as far as people, particularly in smaller parts of the country, are concerned. It gives them an option or a way out of a difficult situation. That's one part of it. But the problem there may be, and I think this is a question which maybe Tarjini can also think about, and maybe we can try and get her in on this question as well. Is fine. We get reservation in government employment. How many transgender people will apply for that post? And is there a gap we're facing there? The reason I raise that question is because of the earlier studies. If you go back to the Dwarakanath Commission report and other studies, and the PUCL report on human rights violations against the transgender community, the point which emerges really quite powerfully is that the transgender community is often the it's not they're not school dropouts. They're pushed out of school. Large majority of them. You speak to any of them, they will tell you that we didn't finish our schooling and they will tell you because of the bullying in school. So in a sense, you have this, assuming, for example, we get reservation, which we have, and getting to the point of why it's so important, but we get the reservation, but then we faced with this barrier of large parts of the community not able to access it because they don't have the qualification of an SSLC pass. Then that puts another barrier, and we have to work at how do we address the question of education in the trans community. That's one part of the story of the implementation question, which is a struggle with and we have to fight with and we have to work really hard at. But the question of why, getting back to the point of why there's still a very significant step in the struggle for the rights of the trans community, is I think we should look at the reservation question. Where is it in the Indian Constitution? It will come in this case under Article 16.1. This is the idea of horizontal reservation will be read under 16.1. We say vertical reservation will be read under 16.4. And what does 16.1 say, just for everybody to know, right? It says there should be equality of opportunity for all citizens in matters relating to employment or appointment to any office under the state, right? So it's a very simple point. You're saying on the face of it, there should be an equality of opportunity when it comes to when it comes to the question of employment or appointment to any office under the state. What does it say of a state where there's been no transgender person who's been employed at all? It says that this Article 16 remains only in theory and not in practice. So the point really, or the fact that this 16.4 is being operationalized, what you're doing is you're actually setting in place the norm of equality, and that is the great importance of this entire of achieving this particular victory. One is the number of people able to access it. That's a struggle we must fight and we must work really hard at trying to fulfill. But even apart from that, the fact that today a transgender person can apply for any job based on their gender identity and under the state government is a very important step forward. And take it one step further. Again, if you look at the constitutional framework, you have 14, which is equality, 15, which is non-discrimination, 16, which makes a provision for employment in the state as well as affirmative action, and then you have 17, which is a prohibition of the practice of untouchability. The question is asked is why the prohibition of the practice of untouchability under the equality provisions? And that's a very important question because the answer is that sometimes what inhibits you from enjoying a right to equality are the societal biases and prejudices, in this case, the practice of untouchability. So, in a similar way, is there this bias or discrimination which prevents transgender people from accessing employment under the state? The answer is yes. You go back to the rules, in fact. It's very interesting that the rules themselves make the point. It's very interesting that they make the point that the recruitment authority or the appointment authority shall not discriminate a transgender person while making a selection of appointment to any category of the post. So what we are affirming is a principle under 16. What they're affirming is the principle under 15 of non-discrimination. And what they're affirming is really the idea of equality. So that's one part of it. Equality is one part of it. The other part of it is, the question which I think in the US, they're very good at this, right? When Obama became the president, what was the point he made? He said, now the dreams are open as far as every black person in this country is concerned. Your dreams are unleashed. You can be, as a young kid, you can aspire to become president. When Hillary Clinton ordered the campaign, she's saying that once, if I become president, the glass ceiling is broken. Tomorrow, you all the young women sitting around the country can become presidents, can aspire to be president of the US. So in a similar sense, I mean, what you're saying is you raise the threshold a little bit. You're not saying president in this case, but you're saying at least you have a sense of respectability within the state. You sense your dignity matters. You as an individual matter. Your gender identity is recognized by the institution of the state, and that is a recognition of incalculable value, of really incredible significance. So I think we have to see the significance of this in two ways, and people who make the point that you how many people will apply, not many people get a job, etc., etc. That's one part of the story, but that's only one part of the story. The other significant part of the story is you're unleashing dreams and aspirations of the transgender community.
So it's a very strong, undoubtedly, it's a very strong narrative that we're putting forth now. Like we're telling everyone from the community that, hey, look, it's possible, you can dream, you can be everything that everyone else is, essentially.
Do you want to get Tarjini in as well if she has any thoughts on this point?
Yes, I'm just waiting. Rajani, do you want to pitch it?
That was yeah, very well put. So I think I really agree with what Sir said in the end, that some people go forth to argue saying that, not many people are going to apply and all that. It is not about how many people are going to apply. It is about that them having a choice to apply now. It's not about, whether they will or not. The point is that they can now. So to provide them an option to do so is a step ahead in a better direction. So that's yeah, what I would like to say.
So this brings us to the question. So this reservation that you said is based on gender identity. That's this is transgender identity. Can you hear me, sir? Yeah. So this reservation is based on the transgender identity. So what do you think it would mean? What do you think the implications of this reservation would be for the way the transgender identity is perceived in our society? And do you think it will create a change about how the society views our transgender community?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking the question, because I think that's really linked to what I was trying to say till now, which is that we have to again understand the relationship between law and social transformation, and what is the impact of a judgment is the question which we're really asking. And the answer you're providing in this context is the impact of a judgment is that you create, in a sense, possibilities. You create through utilization of the judgment through role models. And that can have very, very, very powerful transformative impact. Again, in the realm of sexuality, one thing we know very, very well is one way in which we deal with bias and prejudice is through a certain form of face-to-face contact. When people come in contact with transgender people, right? You come in contact with Padmashali, you can't but be charmed by her. You come in contact with a range of other trans people, as I'm sure all our friends will say that you can't but be charmed by them. There's no way out. I mean, you'll be like, I mean, what you have to accept them as full human beings with full sense of equality. There's no other way out. Any sense of any limited humanity you have, you'll go down that route. And the reason you would not have gone down that route is because of lack of exposure. So in that sense, if through this you have more trans people in administration, that's a very important step forward. Again, if we think imaginatively, and if through our work in terms of ensuring education levels, etc., they're able to fulfill, that's a very, very important development. Again, you go back to 16.4. The language uses they talk about the adequacy of representation. Different back communities must have the adequacy of representation in the structure of the state. The question again is why? Why should communities be adequately represented? The two reasons for that. One is the assumption that if you're a member of a particular marginalized community, you understand the problems of the community much better than other people will. And so it's important to have a diversity in the structure, in the administration of the state. Second, of course, is that you're affirming the constitutional principle of fraternity. You're affirming the constitutional principle of plurality, or the fact that we're a diverse country, right? And the fact that you show diversity by having diversity in the administration as well. We're still not reached the level of Canada, which has, for example, gay and lesbian people, openly gay and lesbian people as members of parliament, indigenous people as members of parliament, right? And so as ministers, they send out that signal. That should be our aspiration. End of the day, we should have ministers of transgender. That's very important. And I'm glad that many of our transgender colleagues and friends are now in politics. And hopefully they will be, when they reach that position of power and authority, that message they will send out. In the meantime, we are very happy with the fact that change has begun in this process through the use of the through the amendment of the Karnataka recruitment rules, civil service recruitment rules, and we'll hopefully have, if we're able to again. This is a question. There's also the link between, in a sense, uh, the law in theory and the law in practice. Because again, the point is, how does Sangama and other groups now say this is the rules that we have? How do we utilize the space there to ensure that we get transgender people jobs in this particular administrative setup? That might involve, again, that's a question we're thinking about. That might, Rajesh was here, he could address that. That might involve a whole lot of work, whole lot of work, including, for example, people who have not finished the school level SSLC. Is there ways out of that problem, right? If you haven't finished the 10th standard, are there ways, how do you get past that? How do you get past that barrier, right? That's the first barrier. If the qualification is college, then how do we ensure that people can graduate through, get a college degree, right? And these are the two barriers which are there to people getting jobs under this particular transform change. Then we'll have to work to see how we can operationalize these rules. That's why, again, the point being that, I mean, it's a long journey. It's a significant step ahead, but a lot more steps forward to take.
Very true, sir. Like you said, having the transgender people and the community alongside us and having them being represented in every sector of the government.
You're not very audible.
I'm very sorry about that. Can you hear me better now?
A little, I guess.
Am I audible right now? Is it better? Yeah. So just circling back to a concept that we touched upon earlier, like we were talking about reservation and the concept of reservation in India. So now, as of now, reservation has become a very contentious issue in India. In fact, it has become something of a political debate right now. So in that sense, where do you think, and in fact, one of the popular arguments that is put against reservation is that it only furthers the divide and discrimination in the society. For example, in this context, also people say that it only helps those people who are already in a better position within the community itself. So, how do you think reservation fits into our constitution? One, and how do you think it would help adequate representation in the community?
No, that's a good question. Again, you go back to the drafting of the Indian Constitution. The question was the Ambedkar's understanding is that, as he put it, he says on 26 January 1950, we're going to enter into a life of contradictions. As far as social and political life are concerned, we'll have equality. But as far as economic and social life is concerned, we'll have inequality. At the level of politics, it's one man, one vote. But at the level of society, it's not one man, one value. And that's the contradictory structure which we will be entering into. And the question to ask is, if that was the nature of Indian society, then what is the Constitution does to address these forms of inequality? And reservation comes really there. When you're saying that there's been a 2000 year plus history of marginalization, discrimination, ostracization of entire communities who've been kept out of the mainstream, as it were, then reservation is a way of saying that we want to give these communities a space as far as Indian society is concerned, as far as the state is concerned. And the question you can ask is, what is the larger purpose that it serves? The larger purpose it obviously serves is trying to build that idea of a more diverse nation as reflected in the structures of the state. I mean, if you look at even the way the caste population is distributed as far as the administration is concerned, you'll find, for example, as far as the lower reaches of the administration, as far as the municipal workers are concerned, it's almost talking about reservations, almost 100% reservation for the Dalit community, 100%, right? All of them, almost all of them are Dalits. If that is the case, then you realize that this hierarchies and inequalities in Indian society manifest themselves in the structure and the hierarchy of the state. So affirmative action is really one way of redressing that, saying, a society is unequal, but a state should not reflect that inequality. It should challenge that idea of inequality. That's where the idea of reservation really comes in from. Of course, the question is, is it enough? Is it all that we can do? Those are, I think, very significant and very, very important questions. As the conversation, when we began the question itself, the point you made is an important one. Where, for example, if you're saying reservation, who are the people who will finally benefit of this reservation? Think of it, right? The reservation is for a community which is really marginalized, right? And some people in that community, maybe a percentage, less than 10% of of that population, has access to primary education, secondary education, college even maybe less. Who is the one who will be entitled to this job, which the government is now providing? It will be only those with either an SSLC pass or a college degree as it were, and that will be a very minor segment of the population. So that's a fair point to make. Reservation, I'd put it, is not enough. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So to address those at the lower reaches, you have to take on the primary education system. You have to ensure that within the primary education system, you have equality of opportunity to all students. And again, here we get back on the trans question. It's a very important point, because the key issue, which has come up again and again and again in study after study, is that transgender people are pushed out of school at a very young age, because the bullying and the harassment is such a high order that they find it impossible to deal with at that very, very young age. So they're forced to leave the schools and colleges. So should you try and redress these things so that they have an equal stake, equal attempt at whatever jobs may open up in later life? That's one way to look at this entire question. So I take the point from this point of view, saying that reservation is necessary, but it's really not sufficient. That's one. And the second point is, it's a reservation. You see it as a form of what the Mark Gallanter calls it. It's a form of what he calls compensatory discrimination. Undoubtedly, it's discrimination, but his point is it's compensation for centuries of discrimination suffered by an entire community. And if Supreme Court, again, within Supreme Court's framework, if it's within the framework of it's under 50%, that's constitutionally valid.
Indeed, sir. Tarjini, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think I completely agree with Sir that it's a different question regarding the sufficiency of reservation, whether it is sufficient or not, but of course it is necessary. And the transgender community being the most marginalized out of all. So like I said earlier, at least the other reserved categories or the other marginalized communities have the option of an employment. However menial the job may be, they do have that option of some sort of employment. The people from the transgender community are deprived of that very opportunity to study, to work, to do anything whatsoever. So that is one major reason why they would require reservation for that community especially. And with reference to Darshani's question regarding whether reservation is needed or not needed at all, something that I would like to comment is what most people who challenge this concept of reservation, they challenge it on the notion that some of the marginalized communities are economically very well off. And because they are economically very well off, therefore they do not require reservation, and any form of reservation is just adding to the already privileges that they've been given. So what they fail to understand here is that you may be economically very well off. I may be an extremely rich person, but will I get a seat at the table where other people are sitting? So that is where the picture of social equality comes into picture. So even if I'm rich, even if I have access to resources, if I'm not given the same social standing, respect, dignity that I deserve, then there is no point, and that is where reservation is required, so that in the eyes of the society, my dignity, my level is seen at par with the other members.
Yeah. So, Tajani, I completely agree with your seat at the table, right? And with respect to social equality, the best example of like a marginalized section, still, of course, we're not reached it yet, but seizing their seat at the table would be women. Like, for example, women at work, even say 20, 30 years ago, was not common. Even today, if you see the corporate world, why corporate? Look at the judiciary itself, right? How many women do we have in positions of power, right? But
Hmm.
it has like slowly started. And the reason how we normalize this, you have to normalize it, right? And the best way to do that is to see more people like it. Like, for
Hmm.
example, the other day, I remember picking my niece up from some sort of some kid play date sort of thing. And then it's so nice. I don't think me 25 years ago, 26 years ago would have realized that I didn't see parents where, there was a lesbian couple with a child. It's lovely to see things like that, right? And I think those are opportunities, and this is a great opportunity for the transgender community itself. Because the minute you put a face on it, it becomes more personal. Like, say, if I had a colleague in office who was like from the community, I'd realize the value of tiny things like transgender sensitization or the factor that you need
Exactly, exactly.
washroom. So I think it hits closer to home. It's a great step towards progress. So I think I completely agree with you. Like social equality, maybe this is a great push towards it.
Yes, yes.
Now I'd like to call Venkesh sir. He has a couple of comments to make on the discussion. Sir?
Yeah. See why it becomes so important. In fact, I was listening to Arvind. It's a valid point which we have is that the community's representation in a society is very important. In fact, representation is not something which is the whole construct of reservation. When you look at it, in India, it is considered as a dole out for the undeserving. The argument of reservation is always looked down upon as that you're taking away the opportunity for the really eligible ones. This is the construct that comes in. Every time I get to see the arguments on reservation, it comes from that the undeserving people are given employment. The you are pampering a section of society of inefficient people are being recruited. So the construct is that we are not able to progress. You come across million arguments of this nature. A reservation is not something which is a dole out, as has been put forward by the people. A reservation is an entitlement of participation in the system. So for example, when we have 25% of this country belonging to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, 25% should be represented in parliament, 25% should be represented in army, 25% should be represented in education, 25%. That kind of representation is a right, it's an entitlement. It is not somebody giving an opportunity for others. So now the whole construct is that way. And second part is that what are we looking in terms of the reservation in this country is concerned. In this country, we talk in terms of reservation as in public employment belonging to the government. In fact, as of now, reservation is applicable only to the government sector and public sector. It's got nothing to do with the private sector at all. And it is not applicable to great number of institutions, including judiciary. So where there is no possibility of pushing forward the kind of reservation that we have, there is some amount of understanding that we need to also recruit people from the other sections of society, but it's a skewed percentage that we have in judiciary. In fact, because we are lawyers, can certainly make a statement of the skewed representation in our judiciary itself. It's a reality. And given that kind of a factor, look at a community like transgender. So extremely pushed to such a situation of non-existence. They don't exist at all in records. They don't see, and they're not visible. They're not part of any statistics in this country at all. They just don't exist. So the construct is that among the LGBT communities, one of the most marginalized part is transgender community. Except for sex work and begging, they have no option. In fact, in the last 21 years, of our work with the community, we have seen the kind of violence that has been faced, the graphical description of the violence. It's very difficult for me to make a statement because the innumerable number of cases, trials which we have attended, and the number of deaths we have seen, suicides we have seen, murders that we have seen, the kind of harsh treatment meted out to this community, that there is a requirement that they should have that space. In fact, for the first time, we are extremely thankful to Dwaraknath. Dr. Dwaraknath was the first person, as a chairperson of the Backward Classes Commission, come with a very comprehensive report on the transgender community's right. In fact, he looked at a much larger view than what the NALSA or the other judgments can be. Huge study that he made. In fact, the other day he made a presentation to our talk show in Canada. Amazing work was done, groundwork was done by Dr. C.S. Dwaraknath. And of course, he himself being a very senior lawyer on the subject and then this big scholar on reservation, so he could do a great job on this particular aspect. And that set the ball rolling. And for the first time, we saw the change. In the last 21 years, I have to admit that the exemplary work by Sangama and the number of other organizations in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Goa, Maharashtra, Bombay, and UP, West Bengal, a great number of states we have. The wonderful work to the community these organizations have done also has resulted in a state wherein that the community has a place to go. That's one great change which has happened. And today, in the last 21 years, we say that when you were talking of reservation, there is a statement which was put to Tarjani that there were very few people to seek employment. Yes, there are very few people to seek employment. Education is very limited in this community. But let me tell you one thing. From among this community now, in Bangalore alone, we have 3 lawyers. We have a radio jockey. We have a cinematographer. So you look at the community, given an opportunity, they can grab the opportunity, become something. There is a space possible. And secondly, the employment notion which we have under the sections which you are talking, predominantly middle class and upper middle class sections who are watching this program is true. They try to understand that government employment comes at various levels. You know, class A, B, C, D sections of the society employment. A, B, C are through competitive examinations where the people are recruited by the state under the civil service rules. And category D is an employment at the lowest level, which is done at the district level. A district judge employs that in the class 4 staff in his jurisdiction. So does the deputy commissioner, so does the executive engineer, so does the police officer, so does any of these officers within that particular sphere. They are able to appoint class 4 employees. So we are able to present, if there is a law which says that there is an entitlement, that involves getting a possibility of employment for transgender, not necessarily
So you're on mute, sir.
You're on mute. Okay.
yeah, the government also has to invest for the community. In fact, that's one of the major challenges which we have. They have to invest in education of this community. They must invest in skill development for this community. For example, when you talk in terms of reservation, that should also be extended towards the education in the institutions and technical institutions, every segment which is there. Once we start getting that kind of space, certainly the community is going to bring it change. And I've seen this happen in this country in the last 70 years. Women who do not have any space, they are a great part of every sphere of activity in this country. Is it not a fact? It is a thing which you have seen in our own eyes. Despite the challenges, yes, women are not being sufficiently represented, but there is a move towards their education. There is a move towards their employment. This is possible that's happening. When you look at the reservation, which has brought in this change in 70 years' time in getting employment for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe in this country, it has brought a great amount of employment opportunities for them. Though still there are much more to be done, but it opens a window of opportunity for a community to seek a kind of space. And see, getting a kind of space also is a process. A very important thing which we wanted to tell is that once you get a space for yourself, it becomes a normal kind of a person. In fact, let me give an example which Arvind was referring to. One of the first employees in government in Karnataka was a class 4 employee in High Court of Karnataka. A wonderful, proud member of Sangama who got employed as a class 4 employee in High Court. She is one of the most loved employees. She always has so many friends and so many women, so many men. Everyone works with her. She is such a joy, so efficient, so lovely. Everyone respects her professional work. It's a joy. You can see one excellent example. So given an opportunity, people become normal. No, nobody now, though she's transgender, there is the discrimination that she is to face through has come down to such a degree because she has an employment, she has respect, she has efficiency. This brings in a change. I think that's somewhere we look for this community. So we would like to see that this change happen. So this reservation, as the title of this talk show goes, is a whiff from a window. But see that kind of some breeze, some breathing thing which you could have. I'm extremely cloistered existence of this community. We are trying to get able to see some amount of breathing space, some breathing space for us. I think that in longer days would bring in a change. This is a classic change that's going to happen in this particular thing. And once we are able to bring that kind of a change, it would help the community in the long run. And this is something to be replicated elsewhere. Why I become so important is in a country like India, one of the most populous countries in the world. We hold almost 14% of the population of the world. When such is the size of the country, you can as well imagine the number of persons who belong to these communities who are virtually not visible at all. So for them, a space of this nature would make tons of difference. And there's a need that this need to be replicated in other states also. I think Reach Law is going to work for that. Reach Law are going to seek the change that need to happen. And because we're working with number of other organizations in other states along with Sangama. And this is going to be a continuous process which we are doing. And this today, we're extremely thankful for government of Karnataka for setting the ball rolling. It certainly requires that kind of a respect from the community for making this a possibility for this community which has seen. It is a state where we had seen such amount of violence, such amount of inhuman conditions the community has faced. Today, this community is seeing a window of opportunity for them in government employment. This will take its own shape. We're also working with various possibilities. There is a requirement for education, there is a requirement for training, skill development. Many of these aspects need to develop, but it's a beginning. And we see not only for transgender community, we're also looking for other sexual minorities. So transgender community is one of these sexual minorities. There are other sexual minorities who are also in very difficult conditions in this. So that's one of the, it gives them hope. It gives them a possibility which is there. So this right which we have guaranteed, entitled under the Constitution, a social justice, a space for equality, a space for equal opportunity, a space for equal protection of law, a space for being not discriminated, a space for ensured livelihood, and a dignity of life and freedom of one's own expression, identity is concerned. Many of these rights which are guaranteed to every human being in this country, was denied to transgender community. I think this is one step in that direction where we're able to see that kind of change happening. I think from that construct, this is a great, wonderful, great step which is initiated by Government of Karnataka. We thank Government of Karnataka for that. Yeah.
So, like you said, I hope I'm audible. Like you said, this is a beginning. It is a first step towards a bigger change. And like you rightly said, it takes a lot more like technical education, awareness, sensitization to bring about the actual change that we hope to bring about. And Sangama as well as Reach Lawyer have been doing decades of this work to promote and protect the welfare of this community. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey in this case, like along with Sangama, since the last year till now?
So my journey is with Arvind Naran. He is also here. Me, Arvind, we both started. In fact, Arvind had much senior experience on the community rights concern for LGBT, but I joined 21 years ago as part of a study for the transgender community, human rights situation of the transgender for the sexual minorities per se. Then we did the second set of report. It was a PUCL initiative which had the opportunity to participate, which resulted in developing an interest for the conditions of the community and need of their legal assistance that was required. So my office, we took that singular interest in supporting every kind of human rights violations happen, ensure that the women, this community gets protection. So over a period of time, we had a huge number of litigations because we were making it different. We brought in a kind of a very professional approach towards the legal assistance to this community, and by giving them the best quality legal assistance, pro bono. So that made the difference. The community cannot afford. Most of them live with begging and sex work. They can't afford a decent lawyer. So Reach Lawyer, when we started, we started providing that amount of quality legal assistance for them. We devised new tools of crisis intervention mechanisms. And we also realized one of the major change that happened was that we also realized that it is not just giving legal assistance or litigation support which matters, or protection of the community rights or defending their human rights. It's not just that. It is that they need to be empowered. So therefore, we started providing training program for them on the Miranda rights, on DK Basu judgment, on all the host of rights that they had, the training on the constitutional rights that they had, fundamental rights that they had, right to life, right to education, right to equality. Many of these concepts that we talk in terms today were imparted to the community over a period of time, how they could exercise them, and more from a practical perspective. In fact, we have Arvind. In fact, me and Arvind, we have done, I don't know how many number of training programs we have conducted for the communities in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, and Goa and Maharashtra. Great number of training programs that we have conducted. That has helped. There's been a journey. In fact, a continuous engagement of that nature. It made our life also. In fact, when I say that what amount of support that I have done to the community, I would rather say more than what I have done to the community. The community has enriched my experience. Community has enriched my experience. Community has given me such kind of understanding. And today, when I travel any part of the country or anywhere else which I go for travel, the first recognition which I get, despite the fact that we do work on various verticals, I'm recognized immediately as the lawyer for the LGBTQ. And that's something which goes without saying. Great number of friends would identify that he, Mr. Venkatesh, represents. In fact, good number of my judges in High Court would talk to me that, how's the community? In fact, they would not ask about how's my family. They are talking about how's the community. That's the amount of attachment and the work we have done over a period of time. My profession has got so associated with it, and it has enriched me much more. And there's also more important thing at a personal note. It's at a personal note. is that when I see many of them, they come. So they call me a dad, they call me an uncle. And the kind of love the communities have showered on me, I think that's a great love that I've seen from the community. And that's a great take from this. And that's something which I enjoy. They have contributed greatly to my life and to my family life. My life, my wife, my son, all of us are part of this. My office colleagues, we have Tarjini here. So all of them have been supporting. In fact, one of my colleagues who is not here in this meeting, Purushottam, has done so much cases in magistrate court. I think it's a singular mention that if there is any person belonging to LGBT being arrested in magistrate court, brought to court in Bangalore, the judges would summon Purushottam. He said, call Mr. Purushottam. He has a client here. So that's the kind of association with the work of the community that has happened. It has been a great thing. And today we feel extremely happy that this community, a ray of hope we see in public employment. I think we will be certainly working with them. We will certainly wanting to help them to get this opportunity at the first. Every time when there is an opportunity, we will try to see that find someone to get some employment for them. We'll do that. That's going to be our job henceforth. It's a thing which we need to do. All of us need to do.
Indeed, sir. Thank you for that. Thank you for the conversation as well as the decades of work. Before we wrap up, do we have any closing comments from Arvind sir or Tarjini ma'am?
Yeah, I would like Arvind to speak here. Sure.
Just to say, it's absolutely wonderful to hear Venkatesh again, and the sense of passion and enthusiasm and love he has for the community. And it's true. I remember the first time. I mean, when in Cubbon Park, when we were behind the High Court, we had met because we were doing that fact finding of the People's Union of Civil Liberties on human rights violations against sexuality minorities. That was in 2000, and 2000 to 2021. I think the clearly, right. I mean, if you draw that line, the order which we've got now, the notification we've got right now is really an outcome of those really decades of struggle. And really, in many ways, again, the point which I've learned again from Venkatesh very much is how the law and social change really go together, And he'd always make that point. And the transgender people, for example, when 377 went, colleagues and friends, the point they made is that the law has gone because we fought against it on the street, So people own that struggle. And that's the unique part of the struggle of the LGBT community and the struggle with the law. It was never a struggle where there was no connection between the community and the legal process. The two went really hand in hand. And again, I want to narrate one more thing which I remembered. Again, this is which I learned from Venkatesh, which I think is worth narrating because people need to know this. There's once a protest against the brutal torture and rape of Kokila, one of our transgender colleagues and friends. And Venkatesh was, of course, the brain behind the legal strategy. Right? And legal strategy means not just the strategy in court, but equally the strategy outside the court. Here, the challenging question is, this horrible incident has happened. How do you ensure it doesn't happen again? Right? And he taught me something. So what he said is that we will have a press conference on this. And who addressed the press conference, of course, Venkatesh, was Gauri Lankesh. He got Gauri Lankesh into this framework as well. And Gauri Lankesh is a client of Venkatesh already, who was not particularly concerned about trans people till Venkatesh took it up with her and said, hey, this is an important issue. You better address this issue as well. And she came as well in that press conference. And the press conference, the important thing they did is the leaflet made the point or named the police officers, Ashwath Narayan Reddy, B, C, D. These are the 4 officers who are guilty of the rape of Kokila. Right? And as Venkatesh said, I still remember this. He said, see, we might get something in court, but today, the names of these 4 police officers are mud as far as society is concerned. They won't know where to hide their face. Your objective has been achieved. He's right. Because after that, again, the point he made, which comes back to my memory, is whenever you go to the at late night, you go to a police station because a transgender person is picked up or whatever, the police officer will say, "Bidappa avarannam, avarge vakilaru iddare. Leave them alone. They have lawyers. Just leave them alone. It's not worth our trouble." And so who are they referring to? They're referring to basically Venkatesh, who's going to be there at whatever time of the night and create such havoc that the police are like, it's not worth my time at all. So the point is really this. How do you take forward the rights of a community? You take it forward with a struggle at the ground level, which is linked up to the two changes in the law. And the two really go hand in hand. That's I think the powerful example which we get from really the Bangalore context. None of the work which Reach Law is doing is done in the abstract. It's always linked to the community, and the change happens because of the link to the community, and that's really the powerful point there. And I think part of the reason why I was keen on coming to this program is really to see that, because we see this as really the outcome of the long process of struggle and of really a unique kind of an intelligence of saying how we use the law to take the rights of the community forward. You take maybe a high court or a Supreme Court perspective, people may not get the sense of a link to the community so well. It's only some places which have that community context and the link to the community very, very well. And Bangalore, because of the work of a range of groups and organizations, is really one of those places.
See, that's one advantage in Bangalore. The great advantage in Bangalore has been the amount of support that we had from number of organizations. Almost all the organizations that are working on human rights within the community and outside the communities all came together. Every incident of violation of right of a transgender person, they came together. I think the big change that happened was that for this kind of higher degree of visibility in Bangalore, I would rather attribute to Sangama's very political kind of approach in the beginning, wherein they encouraged the members of the community to be part of all the social movements. That was one of the major things, whether it is a Kaveri issue, whether it is a Baba Budangiri issue, whether it is a slum dwellers issue. So you talk of any of the social issues, the struggles used to happen. The community of sexual minorities would be there lending their support for that particular movement. Women's rights. If there was a rape of a woman, yes, the community would also be there along with others. This participation made everyone else part of the process. In fact, that helped us greatly. In fact, as a lawyer, it was easier because for me, because I represent a great number of these organizations, it was easier for me to get their support also. So the advantage was that. And thanks to the legal profession we work with, in fact, because of my friendship with so many journalists over decades, helped that good number of the media persons would come and listen to the stories of these particular cases. In fact, that made it also, as Arvind was informing about the Kokila's case. I did not take up cases because the list of cases are so long. I go on and on for hours on end because that's the kind of number of cases that we have done. But what matters is that at every step of the human rights campaign for the sexual minorities, we had always used it. The going to the media, talking to the media, explaining to the media what the rights are and what are being violated, how this action need to be initiated, and putting across people who are violated, they're very loud and clear, and that made a difference. Second thing which we did was that one of the major, even today very gratifying, was that good number, as Arvind was talking to, matters, discussions happened in High Court and Supreme Court, but it was not the case. We deconstructed the whole process and we started working at the magistrate court. That is the place, in fact, a transgender person has no clue about any court beyond a magistrate court. Her life, for them, court is only magistrate court. There's nothing beyond that. Unless if they're caught in serious cases thereafter when we conducted murder, emasculation, many of these offenses which they did, against that they were alleged. Those cases, apart from that, they had not seen the sessions court. So most of the cases were a magistrate court. So we did shift our work to magistrate court, and there we did a campaign. That was an opportunity for us. It gave us a wonderful window of opportunity to campaign for the community rights. In fact, in every case, in every cross-examination of a witness, we will come with the community interest, community rights, discrimination, every aspect of it, and present it to the court. In fact, good number of magistrates learned how difficult the life of the sexual minorities, not only transgender, every sexual minority is concerned. That made the difference. In fact, even today, I remember in 2008 when one Subramaniam, a judge of the Sessions Court at Ooty, where we conducted a case of murder in lesbian case, the end of the trial, before he delivered the judgment, on the day we closed the trial or closed our argument, he stood up and thanked us for giving him an opportunity to learn about the rights of the communities. In fact, I could not have said anything more than that. A judge standing up at the court and thanking us for the work we did for the community and thanking us for bringing him the kind of challenges faced by the community. I think we have always used the court also a place of campaign for the rights of the community. It has helped us in a big way. I would not have done all this without that kind of support from Sangama. Not that we had any financial thing to going on, but it was certainly a place Sangama invested its time, energy on this particular aspect and reaching out to the community, helping him out. Right, even communicating with the accused or the victim to talk about what exactly the situation. That helped in a big way. And this journey of 21 years, as Arvind would say that, it was strange. When both of us went for the first time to inquire about the transgender the community rights, they took us to the High Court, the same place where I practice every day. Evening it turns out to be the cruising area for the community. So we did not have all these barricades as you have now in Karnataka High Court. It was totally open. And you see nearly more than 100, 120 people out there in the premises, High Court premises, around the corridor, garden, and all these places, sitting, talking, discussing, because they don't have a space to sit and to talk. It was for the first time when we were introduced to the kind of challenges faced by sexual minorities. I think that we have traveled quite a distance, Arvind, in 21 years. And such amount of support from, and it is joy. It has been an amazing thing. And more than we doing service to the community has enriched our lives. That I would certainly acknowledge all the time. Yeah. Yes, Darshini.
Thank you, sir. Tanjini, do you have any closing comments before we wrap up?
Not really, but I would like to express my gratitude, especially to Venkatesh sir, since he's been working with the community for around 30 years. And due to his experience as well as service, the kind of platform that Reach Lawyer provided to me as an advocate, as well as the kind of impact, of course, it made for the transgender community. So I'm grateful to Venkatesh sir for that, for his long years of service, which gave me this case on a silver platter, basically, to work on. So I would like to express my gratitude to sir for that.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Aravind, sir. Thank you, Tanjini, as well as Venkatesh, sir, and Namrata. It has been a very enriching conversation, and I'm sure it was an enriching conversation to our audience also, which brings us to the end of today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.